Your trusted connectivity partner, Telkom Business, proudly brings you the Entrepreneurial SME Show.
This is the Entrepreneurial SME with me, Mabote. This week, we're focusing on SME financing and the roller coaster ride of securing the appropriate funding of your business. Our expert guests are Refilwe Madigage, Senior Channel Specialist for Financial Services at Telkom, and Tessendorf, Head of Sales at Retail Capital South Africa. Good evening, Refilwe and Chet. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to start right with the hardest question, Refilwe, to say, is the current climate of funding in South Africa good or bad? Maybe let me ask it favorably. What is the current climate?
Okay, so what we've seen from our side, Rams, is that there's a lot of funding that is required, right? But mostly that we find and that realized with our clients is that some of them are rejected because they are mainly startups, right? And the offering that we offer starts from 6 months. So there is definitely an appetite for funding in the market. However, I think there's limitations in terms of who gets the funding.
It will give you a bit of comfort that on this show, most of the SMEs that we deal with are actually at least a year old, so they're not startups. And I'm hoping that they'll get good insights as we go along. Chad, there is also an argument, though, that there is no scarcity of money out there, that there's probably a scarcity of great ideas and sometimes ways of accessing the money.
Yes, Ramswell, first of all, thanks for having us on the show this evening. And yeah, look, I mean, we in the space that we're in, an alternative funding space, we've seen that certainly it is extremely difficult for SMEs to have access to funding and to capital, and we deal almost daily with some brilliant minds, brilliant SMEs who have huge potential, but just struggle to access funding to harness that potential. So definitely a lot of scope and demand for funding for our SMEs.
You do a lot of insights as Retail Capital on SME economic forecasts. What's the latest? What are we seeing out there, Chad?
Well, I think if we just look back a little bit, maybe to the first quarter, it was an extremely difficult time for us. Challenging for just in terms of consumer spend being under pressure, and that driven by the high interest rates, inflation, fuel costs, electricity costs, which then obviously puts a lot of pressure on businesses. And I think if you just look a little bit ahead now, coming off the back of those headwinds, and also where we were seeing sort of a lot of business owners holding back, choosing not to invest in their businesses in the lead up to the elections. Looking ahead, we're seeing a lot more optimism. So then just in terms of load shedding, we're seeing a significant improvement in Eskom's service delivery, where the electricity availability is up by 8%, which I think is significant. Still grappling with the high cost of electricity, which is a challenge, but just the impact of having less load shedding and impact on businesses is huge. I think, again, just in terms of businesses being more open to invest in their businesses now with elections behind us, I think the newly elected GNU has created more stability, and as I say, there's that appetite now for investment. There's talk of potential interest rate cuts around September to November, and hopefully, if that comes into play, it'll add some much needed relief for SMEs and consumers alike.
In fact, on that note, Chad, I'd like to ask Refilwe this question, because this issue of interest rates and all other things that you've mentioned have had a stressful impact on SMEs. Some of them are spending more than 5% Refilwe of their budgets on information and communications technology. In this digital world that we live in, great, we all have to digitize, right? But it has a stressful impact on their cash flow. So how do they keep the balance?
Yeah, it's a really a challenge on our side that we've seen, and I think Chad can jump in. What we've seen is there's more most of our SMEs they lack digital presence. So in other words, some of the transactions are not digitized as such, and they're not seen on the bank statements, and which is a difficult one for them to qualify for funding on our side, because we really need the bank statement and when we need to see those transactions going on there. And also in terms of diversifying their business or customers, and that's where we've seen a lot of challenges in terms of qualifying for funding, and it's really causing a strain on our SMEs.
Chad, and quickly, because I need to take a break, is that which Refilwe spoke about maybe just a question of not handling the balance sheet properly so that the bank could see you as bankable and therefore it's easier to access more money?
Yeah, 100%. Look, I think a key factor for success for SMEs is making themselves fundable. So it's creating these healthy credit profile, which in its simplest form is just the way they conduct their bank accounts, the way they conduct payments to their creditors is vital. And then to Refilwe's point, just making their revenue visible and sort of digitizing the majority of that revenue by making use of card machines so that revenue is visible to the funders. Obviously, that's something that we look quite closely at and how we determine the levels of funding that we provide.
Before we risk making this a problem conversation, let's take a break and come back and talk solutions. So we shall be back in a while. Don't touch that dial.